Welcome to Art Day number 93. If this is your first time here, my name is Andrew Loren, and I am an artist that's doing an everyday series where I document my growth as an artist, how I practice, and how I think about practicing. And today I actually have what I think is a really interesting topic to discuss while this time lapse is playing next to me of a drawing that I just did. Before I jump into this topic, which is about the art of practicing and some things I've been thinking about recently about my own art practice that maybe you've confronted or that maybe will help you think about how to better practice, I'll just quickly talk about the details of the time lapse. So if you've been following along, I recently kind of just did a medium shift where I was previously using a lot of lead pencil, a little bit of oil paint, but mostly working on just kind of like standard sketchbook drawing paper with graphite. And I recently made the switch into something a little bit more professional, if you will, like a little bit more serious, which is charcoal on newsprint paper. And the reason I say more professional and more serious is a lot of the most well-known ateliers, the most well-known art schools, the most professional of artists are generally using this combination of mediums. So they use the Conte à Paris pencils, the 1710 series, along with a pad of newsprint paper, and that's the general medium that everyone's really kind of using and working on. And I'm just starting to explore it and understand why a little bit better. So I have used this medium. I've been drawing, I would say, seriously now for about 5 years, and I did explore this medium a little bit earlier in my practice. I maybe had like 1 year or 2 years with it. In fact, I even submitted a piece to an art show in New York City, like just kind of like a group show that was done in that style. And so I had explored it a lot, but it has been 2 or 3 years since I've worked with this combination of medium. So what I'm doing for this exercise that's playing along next to me is I'm doing a master copy of a Jeff Watts work. And so if you're not familiar with who Jeff Watts is, he runs the Watts Atelier, which is an art school in California, which in my personal opinion might be one of the most influential artists in terms of how art is done that's living today. Most of the top creators, either on YouTube or most of the top artists on Instagram, all came through the Watts Atelier. So that includes people like Stan Prokopenko, Eric Gist. It includes Brian Knox. That's someone who's sent to me frequently, whose videos I watch frequently. Bradwin Jones. All of these different folks were all trained at Watts Atelier by Jeff Watts. So, I think his influence is yet to fully be seen, how much influence he really has. And he built his school on the foundation of something known as the Riley method. If you're curious, you can look up more. I won't talk about that right now. But the idea is I kind of want to start pursuing what they're doing at this more serious level atelier. So I'm actually about to enroll myself in some classes, actually, just to continue to level up. And I'll update on that in a few series, not today. But I'm also just trying to explore this medium on my own again, just to get a better understanding. So the idea for today was to copy Jeff Watts, who was using the exact same medium. So the drawing that I'm copying is 100% done on newsprint and 100% done with Conte à Paris pencils, the exact same mediums that I'm using. So in this way, I can kind of better copy his strokes, his approach, and kind of like his way of manipulating and working with the medium. It's one thing to do a master copy, just doing a copy of someone's drawing, and it's like takes it to a whole nother level to do a master copy using the identical medium as the artist that you're copying. So that's kind of enough about the drawing that's going beside me. And I'll even put like a little jump in the video, or like a little notification in the beginning of the video if you want to skip all of that and just hear about what I have to talk to today. So if you're just joining for that part, hello again. And I will now talk about this idea of the art of practicing art. So this is a super deep topic, and it's really actually what this entire series is about. So in some way, every single video has spoken to this a little bit. And this particular thing I want to talk about today is like one aspect of this art to practicing art. So the one fundamental piece always is consistency. And that's not just myself saying that, that is there's like a few fundamental truths with practicing art, and one of them is being consistent and practicing nearly every day, or every day if you can. And that's kind of like a universal truth of growing as an artist. But this next idea that I've kind of been struggling with as I'm making a transition from one medium to the next is that in order to be a master of any element of art, you really have to consistently practice that specific element of art. And every time you're practicing one thing, you're always kind of subtracting or losing another skill. So let me give you an example. As soon as I start working with this combination of mediums, so now I'm working with charcoal and newsprint, my skills in graphite will suffer just because I'm no longer using that medium that I was just using for months and months and months. The less time I spend sharpening and practicing anatomy, the more those skills will wane or disappear. Further, I could spend time studying the portrait or doing portraiture work, and then my figure will suffer, and vice versa. And you're always confronted with these trade-offs. So in this whole period, I haven't really, the last month and a half, I've purely been working with graphite and charcoal, and I haven't done any painting. So my painting skills have for sure suffered. And with that, all my color theory has for sure suffered. So this is something that I've been trying to grapple with because it feels a little bit like nihilistic, or it feels a little bit fatalistic, let's say, as an artist, that you're kind of constantly dying, if you will, in all of these different skill areas, and you can only keep certain ones sharp. And so I was kind of trying to search for an answer on this and like a resolution on this. And I have two elements, two things that I found to speak to this. And actually, both of them came from Jeff Watts, from watching some podcasts that he did, reading a little bit about what he did, and just trying to better understand his mentality with this exact problem. So the first one is, you can actually come up with a decent split for how you would approach your week of, let's say in like 1 week of practicing art. So he actually has a specific recommendation where if you want to get better at oil painting, he recommends that you do like roughly 4 or 5 days of charcoal drawing to every 2 days of oil painting. And in his mind, this is like a nice combination for keeping up with both skills being sharp. And I thought that was really interesting to have such like a specific prescription for that. So my instinct here, my gut, is that probably every person has a different combination. But this whole idea of like doing an art split is actually like really interesting. So for example, if I have like 1 week of practice, let's say we're going to draw for 7 days. So it could be that for 5 of those 7 days, I'm doing drawing, and 2 of them I'm painting, as Jeff Watts suggests. And then maybe out of those 7 days, like 1 or 2 of them is studying anatomy, and maybe 1 or 2 of them is the portrait, and maybe two of them are, 1 of them is with graphite, and other 4 with charcoal. And I kind of come up with some unique split in the week that kind of dictates your art practice. And the idea is to try and keep and build up all of these skills simultaneously in some way, or keep them sharp in some way. And I think probably the exact formula is really individual to every person, both like what you need and also what your goals are. But this is kind of an interesting way of thinking about training art that I hadn't actually thought about before. It's funny, as an analogy, as I mentioned before, I'm very into like working out and weightlifting and things like that. And this is actually really well known in the weightlifting community. Generally, you spend different days of the working out on different parts of the body. So like 1 day might be legs, 1 day might be arms, 1 day might be your chest, then your back, and so on and so forth. And so I had not really conceptualized applying that same concept to the way that I practice art. And so this is something that I'm definitely going to be doing moving forward. So this is one piece of it. This is like the practical answer to that challenge or that problem. Then the other response, like the more existential response, that, you know, Jeff acknowledged in a podcast, was that this is kind of the reality, unfortunately, that everyone faces as artists, that you just won't have your skills sharp at all times. And he talked specifically about one skill that he had. So that was a skill in quick sketch. So being able to do really high level quick sketch. And he said that he had one point in his life where he really reached mastery in that. And he made it a point, even though it was a super busy time in his life, to record his like the session for his online courses all in that period, because he knew he wouldn't be able to sustain that high level or didn't want to sustain that high level for any longer than that period. And so he said that the concept of mastery is really interesting because it's really just like a moment. Mastery is a moment. It's not something that you have necessarily for your whole life and in all these different areas. It's something that's a bit fleeting. And then he also said, when you think about really what it means to be like master, or this is at least something that I took away from the discussion, was about the importance of fundamentals. That those are some things that don't change between any medium. So some examples of these are things like anatomy, some things like understanding value, some things like understanding whether or not, how a shape is churning, how a form is churning. Regardless of the medium that you're working in, if you're making an attempt at representational art, this is something that you'll need to know and need to understand. So hopefully, if you've been struggling with that same issue, or if you haven't thought about that yet, this can kind of give you some instinct into that problem, how I'm thinking about it, how Jeff Watts is thinking about it, and help solve that issue in your own art practice. And I think that's everything for today. So I hope that this video maybe also inspired you to draw today, if you haven't yet. And otherwise, we will see each other tomorrow for day number 94.